Tricks hidden inside restaurant menus. With a theatrical flourish, a somber, leather-bound document is placed in front of you. Inside, the pages bear a tight italicized script and your eyes are drawn to a couple of items that are embellished with flamboyant descriptions. Then you turn to the waiter and order. Hopefully a delicious meal is now on its way, but what led you to choose the food you did? Was it simply because you liked the sound of the steak dish you picked, or did something else influence your decision? You may not realize it, but the menu probably played a far greater role than you'd credit. Far from being glorified price lists, restaurant menus are sophisticated marketing tools that can nudge customers towards certain choices. Here are some of the secret restaurant menu tricks that get you to both eat and spend more. Number 1. A sweet type. The font the menu is written in can convey similar messages. For instance, an italic typeface conveys a perception of quality. But using elaborate fonts that are hard to read could also have another effect. It could alter how the food itself tastes. A study conducted by researchers in Switzerland found that a wine labeled with a difficult-to-read script was liked more by drinkers than the same wine carrying a simpler typeface. Spence's own research has also found that consumers often associate rounder typefaces with sweeter tastes, while angular fonts tend to convey a salty, sour or bitter experience. Number 2. Use family titles to entice customers. Food is associated with beautiful childhood memories for all of us. We all have our favorite family dish or a grandmother's recipe. By connecting the cookies to family by calling them grandmas, restaurants invoke memories of your grandma's homemade chocolate chip cookies. The resulting nostalgia motivates you to try out those cookies. It's effective too, especially in those ma and pa diners. Large fast food chains generally can't get away with stuff like this. Number 3. Indulgent descriptions. This sort of descriptive language is widely used by the food industry. The British retailer Marks & Spencer famously uses long-winded, and often sensual, descriptions of the food it sells in its adverts, to convey the impression of the quality of its products. This is not just a pudding, one advert declared. This is a melt-in-the-middle, Belgian chocolate pudding served with extra thick Channel Island cream. It saw sales rocket by 3,500%. Words have tremendous power over our food choice. Number 4. Letter costs. But beware of menus with rambling, adjective-filled descriptions. There may be a more mercenary reason for verbose dish summaries. They can make the food seem like better value for money. Dan Jurafsky, a professor of computational linguistics at Stanford University, performed a study that analyzed the words and prices of 650,000 dishes on 6,500 menus. He found that if longer words were used to describe a dish, it tended to cost more. For every letter longer the average word length was, the price of the dish it was describing went up by 18 cents. Number 5. They use the first-in-show tactic. Reordering the dishes on the menu can also have dramatic impacts. By placing the most expensive item at the top of the menu, it makes those that come after it seem far more reasonably priced. Research using eye tracking technology has shown that customers read menus in very predictable ways. They will often read a menu much like they would a book. You'll find beef, chicken, appetizer, à la carte, etc. sections. Sources have revealed that people are most likely to pick the first choice in those categories. Thus, restaurants will put their most profitable items first. That way, if you're one of the many that pick the first choice, the restaurant makes the most money of you. Number 6. Highlighting certain items to make them seem special. There are other ways menus can draw your attention to particular dishes, rather than relying upon the path your roving eye takes. Boxes around certain dishes, often high-priced options like steaks, can be particularly effective. Images can also help, but it depends on where you are eating. In many parts of the world, pictures of food tend to be associated with cheaper fast food, and can put off the more snobby eater. The oozing cheese, shining meat juices and running egg yolk on the menus are rarely reflected in the untidy pile of meat, salad and bread that is served. But the power of so-called food porn to set our mouths watering could soon become far more important as restaurants, and menus, move into the digital age. Diners are increasingly able to order their food online through their mobile phone or on interactive displays at their table. Number 7, they don't use dollar signs. Some restaurants do, but the staggering majority of restaurant menus do not. When you see dollar signs, you think of money. They don't want you to think of money. They want you to think of food. The removal of the dollar sign is a slight psychological trick, but it's quite effective. You may be more likely to buy something if you're not reminded of the fact that it costs you money until after you've ordered it rather than before. Number 8, using brand names to create product associations. It sounds complicated, but it really isn't. TGI Fridays uses Jack Daniel's barbecue sauce. Fans of whiskey know the Jack Daniel's name and are thus more likely to enjoy sauce made from one of their favorite beverages. Buying brand name stuff is cool and hip, and many claim it does taste better than non-brand name. It isn't rocket science. People will simply buy stuff more often if they've heard of it before. Number 9, number trick. Practically everyone knows this one. Restaurants will turn a $10 meal into a $9.99 meal because it makes the same thing seem like a better bargain. Some still will use the $9.95 model to make it even more so. Some restaurant chains will even use things like $9.85. When people are surfing prices, they'll see the cheaper stuff and unconsciously want it more. Higher-end restaurants don't typically do this because if you're going to an expensive place, you know you're spending money, so they don't try to mess with you too much. Number 10, marking up the second best. This one is a little hard to describe and requires an explanation. According to Urban Spoon, restaurants will intentionally mark up the second least expensive wine. As Urban Spoon explains, many people are cheap in this economy. There's no reason to be ashamed of that, but they don't want to appear cheap. Thus, they order the second least expensive wine. Restaurants became wise to this and made the second least expensive wine more expensive. It's still the second least expensive, but it's the worst deal out of any wine on the menu. These are some of the tricks hidden inside restaurant menus. The important thing to note here is that restaurants have high turnover numbers. People who go out to eat at nice places tend not to do so very often, so restaurants need to figure out a way to make enough money to keep the doors open. So this isn't something they devised in order to be evil, or terrible companies. Being cognizant of the tricks doesn't mean you have to hate them. You just know they're there. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to this channel.